So, today I'm starting out a new series of stories. These have been really popular over on NoSleep. I'm enjoying reading them, and I think you're going to enjoy them too. So, here we go. When my father was younger, he was in the military in the UK. He saw all kinds of weird things, and he would never give me any details about any of them. So, for me, this is a particularly intriguing sort of idea for a story. Like I said, hope you enjoy it as much as I do. Well, you know what time it is, my dear friends. Time to sit back and relax with your favorite drink and listen. Growing up playing video games and watching war movies, I didn't think twice about joining the Marines so I could be in the infantry. I went through all of the training and unwelcome hardship that makes you really reconsider your decision. Anyway, I got stationed to a desert base known as 29 Palms, the largest piece of military-controlled land in the US. It covers approximately 930 square miles in total. Yeah, it's fucking huge, in Southern California and a few hours from Mexico. When you're that far out, you start to see some shit. Anyway, fast forward to my first field op and me losing my shit. To put things in perspective as to how far away we are from civilization, the closest man-made object is a 3-hour ride away. Now this day was particularly hot because it broke 130, as if the sun said, I told you I could. So, we spent all day hiding under camouflage netting, getting classes about various military tactics. Once the sun set, we set off into the night to get some hard, realistic training done. At night, we practiced using our night vision optic to do simple shit like reloading and reading maps. It produces an image off of ambient infrared light, so you can actually see a lot more shit than the naked eye. Now, let me tell you, the sky is absolutely cluttered with stars. I can see a shooting star every few seconds. Ooh, the Milky Way. It's pretty darn cool. Finally, after roaming around aimlessly for what felt like forever, we head back and we're granted a few hours of sleep. I lay down and start to drift off. I'm suddenly woken up after what felt like 10 minutes, and I get up instantly. Get up, bitch. You're on watch. God damn it. I get dressed and I stand my post dutifully, like I'm told at the checkpoint. I'm given a radio and told to only lift the barbed wire after it gets approved over the radio. It's maybe around 2 a.m., and everyone else in my company is dead asleep, except for myself and an officer in the comm truck. All I can hear are the coyotes. I decide to start looking at the stars with my night vision. I hear a coyote yelp off in the distance, but think nothing of it. A few minutes later, another Marine comes over a small hill in front of me. Nothing crazy, probably taking a dump. He walks towards me, but his eyes don't reflect any light. Rationally, one of us is probably dehydrated, so I think nothing of it. He approaches me, and after a few seconds of staring at me, he simply says, "Can I come in?" His voice didn't sound right. No inflection or questioning tone. Weird. I asked him what his name was, and why he was out so far taking a dump. He tells me his name, Sergeant Wright, and he ignores my dump question. Same weird voice. Granted, I'm new to the unit, so I don't know anyone named Sergeant Wright, but I still had to verify it. Main, this is Rogue Guard 1. There's a Sergeant Wright requesting entry. Over. Rogue Guard 1, this is Main. There is no Sergeant Wright in this company, and the closest unit is 25 miles away. Make sure... No, shit, get the fuck back here right now. Don't let him in or even look at him. Run! As the weird dude started to hear this, his face changed to severe anger. Like he wanted to rip my throat out and drink my blood. By the time I got back, everyone is awake. All of the vehicle lights are turned on, and everyone is packing up, scrambling into the trucks. We leave a lot of shit behind, like the tents, water, and food, and drive the entire 3 hours back. I never got an explanation from anyone, but my squad leader, who was a simple, backwoods kind of guy, who bluntly said that whatever I saw wasn't asking to get through the gate. After my most recent creepy experience with weird-looking people scaring the fuck out of me, we went somewhere much more terrifying. A remote little Marine Corps base called Bridgeport. It's in a national forest just north of Yosemite. It was built to train Marines in the art of mountain warfare. There's a lot of mountains. It's cold, it's windy. And if you ever go there, well, you'll hate your life too. Anyway, when we first get there, we stay in these creepy concrete huts with bunk beds in them. There's a bathroom and some showers, and that's about it. You fight over the outlets to charge your electronics, and there's not really any heat besides a bunch of Marines cramped into one area. The first few days are miserable. Your body has to adjust to the new altitude. The air has less oxygen, so physical work and exercise plays out in slow motion. Oh, and you're constantly tired, and all you want to do is sleep. There isn't much in terms of fresh food, and things can get pretty bleak if you have the wrong mindset. Oh, you wouldn't believe me if I told you these were the better times, eh? Eventually, we march up into the mountains carrying our ridiculously heavy packs, stuffed to the brim with warming layers, food, water, and nicotine. The first few days were easy. We would hike all day and stop to rest and learn a few things on survival and such. There was some snow on the lower parts, but not a ton, thankfully. Around the fourth night, someone had the awesome idea of making us practice our nighttime navigation skills. I'm a pretty decent navigator myself, so I was up for the challenge. No big deal. They hand out the compasses, maps, and protractors, and set up an elaborate system of how to get to the finish line. It was staggered so people weren't walking all over each other. Now this is where things get interesting. I'm in the woods. It's dark and cold. I hate my life, so I'm stumbling through the trees and brush, loud as hell without a care in the world. I just want to finish this dumb thing so I can go to sleep. I get to my first point easily because there's some moonlight shining through the trees. The second one was placed in a fucking river, and I still remember how livid I was standing there, copying down the word donkey etched into an ammo can on top of a rock in a freezing cold river. Wet boots will drive a man insane. I stop to squeeze out the moisture from my socks, and I get this primal feel that I'm being watched. I stand completely still, and all I can hear is my heart beating. No wind or wildlife, just me. My first thought is it's a Marine trying to piggyback off my success. I put on my soggy boots and do what anyone would do. I crest the next hill and stop so I could listen. Nothing. Maybe I'm just freaking the fuck out. Screw this. I keep walking. 10 minutes later, and I get the same feeling. Any rookie stalker knows that you have to match the person's step so they don't hear you. So, I start randomly stopping or changing my step. After a few wholehearted tries, I don't hear any footsteps. but I do hear breathing. It's as if a mountain lion or something crazy. I have no choice but to keep walking and hope I can pull my dull Gerber knife out in time. About this time, I get to my third point and plot my final point. It's near a road, so I cut straight east and literally book it up the road. I still felt like I was being followed the entire time, but I felt safer because I could hear the low roar of a Humvee engine up the road. Looking back, I lead, whatever it was, right to the rest of us. Damn, that was a dumb mistake. Nothing else happens that night. Everyone else gives up and just uses the roads to make it to camp. Those who don't make it back are told to walk towards the sound of a beeping horn. Funny. I get to sleep in the safety of numbers. We use the next day to remediate our nighttime land nav skills and refuel our bodies with food. Once the sun sets, we march off into the mountains in a file. Unfortunately, since I carry a rocket launcher, my natural position is in the back. But not the very last, so that's a positive. We spend the early night hiking. We were moving very fast and probably 20 meters spaced apart. At times it was common to lose sight of each other. All of us were slowly getting exhausted. Suddenly, shit gets dark. Like the ambient light is just being absorbed. I get that same primal fear. Extreme silence. Yeah. Fuck. I keep walking without a word until I hear someone, probably the guy behind me, call my name. I turn around and he looks at me like I'm an idiot. What the fuck, man? Keep going, dude. They're gonna lose us. Okay. Weird. Who called my name? I spin back around and try to see my way through the brush for the guy in front of me. I get a glimpse of him and discreetly yell at him to slow down, but he doesn't even hear me. What the fuck? About the same time, I hear from behind me, dude, what the fuck is... I heard a light rustling of leaves and some twigs, but that's it. I run back maybe 15 meters, which isn't far, but at night it is. There's nothing but his pack on the ground and his rifle. I call out his name. Nothing. I reach for my radio. It's dead. I turn on both of my flashlights. Dead. Fuck. 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 I start yelling. I blow the rape whistle that they made me pack. Nothing. I don't know how long it took them to realize I was missing, and how they backtracked their way to me, but it felt like hours. I could feel whatever it was out there, waiting, just fucking toying with me. I told them everything, and they were convinced the guy just got lost. They all spread out and looked for him for a few hours, but ultimately came up with nothing. Sometime the next morning, one of the hippie park volunteers found him 30 kilometers away across multiple mountains. He was bleeding from his ears, didn't even know his name. Of course, he was in extreme hypothermia, and he had a ton of bruises on him, but no severe bleeding. They ended up getting a helicopter to take him to the nearest hospital. Following the mysterious incident, I was told I was going to be sent down the mountain to answer a few questions. To be honest, I was relieved. It was cold and I didn't want to hike anymore. Everyone else in my company sort of just believed what we were told. He came down with mountain sickness and just walked 30 kilometers over the course of a few hours. I tried to tell a few people about all the creepy shit I'd been noticing, just to make sure I'm not going crazy. Before anyone could respond, my squad leader pulled me aside and told me, "Don't talk about these things, okay?" Maybe he knew something I didn't. But yeah, cool. They sent us up here knowing something was fucking off. Typical military BS. Just stick our heads in the sand and pretend everything is great. I was glad I was leaving for a few days, but there was nothing but complete dread whenever the idea of coming back entered my mind. The Humvee to take me back down finally showed up, and the ride was uneventful. They took me to a small, concrete office-like building. The military police guys were just like me and had a job to do. They got a statement and asked if I noticed the guy doing anything unusual before he disappeared. Nope, seemed normal to me. The NCIS guys came in then. I've dealt with them before over something else, and they're usually good-natured guys. Well, not these ones. Brisk, to the point, and methodical. They read off all the facts about the case like they were reading the nutrition info on a cereal box. Unsurprised and monotone. They'd definitely seen this before. They asked the same questions. When I told them about all the creepy things I'd noticed, they told me that I was probably suffering from mountain sickness too. I was beyond pissed, but I knew better than to argue with them. Another thing. They asked me if I'd taken any pictures that day. I told them I hadn't, but I thought that was strange. Next, they asked if they could swap my boots. To this day, I'm honestly confused as to why the hell they did that. I don't know if they were fucking with me, or if it was part of something else. My only assumption is that this thing alters the surrounding area on a microscopic level. Maybe there was isotope it produces that might have stayed on my boots. I have no clue. But if anyone has any similar stories or information on why they did that, please let me know. At the conclusion of my interview, they made me sign a document stating I wouldn't talk about anything. They would contact me when I was free to disclose any information. This was a few years ago, and they never got back to me. So it may not be legal to talk now, but I have a card up my sleeve that I'm not going to talk about. Anyway, I walked back to our fabulous 5-star concrete hut to get some sleep. Thankfully, I wasn't alone, as there were a few guys that stayed back because they had sickle cell anemia and could actually die if they went above a certain altitude. I took one of the best hot showers I've ever had in my life and headed to my bunk. I was exhausted, but I couldn't sleep. Now, I rarely smoke, but I still carry a pack on me just to make lucrative trades or sell to desperate nicotine fiends in the field. I felt like now was a good time to smoke, so I went outside. Maybe it would calm me down. All was going well until that dreadful feeling came back again. Shit, the tree line was maybe 40 meters away. I don't know how the hell it followed me, or why. Could there be more than one? I stomped out my cigarette and went back inside. I managed to calm myself down and fall asleep, but I would always wake up suddenly after maybe 10 minutes. No dreams, just the overwhelming feeling that you're being observed. The next day, I packed all of my gear into the Humvee and helped the driver load some stuff into the back. The drive was uneventful, and I managed to catch some sleep, only to be woken up by rough terrain here and there. When we finally arrived, it was almost afternoon, and the company was preparing to cover some serious terrain that day. Just my luck. Before I knew it, we were trotting up the steep mountainside. I didn't think it could get any worse until it began to sleet heavily. Jeez, it was bad. The wind picked up and it felt like we were being cut with glass. I couldn't see. People were getting lost and the rocks were slippery. We hiked for hours upon hours, and I swear these mountains were trying to kill us. The sun began to set, and our clothes began to freeze on us. If that wasn't bad enough, I noticed that our compasses were acting weird. No matter how hard you tried, you would eventually end up walking towards the base of a particular mountain that was nicknamed Devil's Incline on our map. This was a military map that someone had made in the 1980s. I don't know if I'll be able to find it again. Coincidentally, I also got that same feeling of being stalked again. Fuck. Anyhow, our guides get us to the right destination, a place called Sardine Rock. As soon as we stop, people start shaking violently because they are no longer hiking and producing zero body heat. Someone was smart enough to predict this and had two-man tents driven up to our rendezvous point on massive trucks. We rarely use tents, but this was literally a life or death situation. To make things worse, the wind picked up and it started to downpour violently. You couldn't hear yourself talk. It was chaos. If you've ever set up a tent in the wind, you'll know how impossible it is. By the time we had everything staked in, the tent had a few inches of water at the bottom. Our sleeping systems are waterproof, but our entire bodies were soaked to the bone, so they eventually became wet from the outside in. Then the temperature dropped and things got worse. Being in the military, you always have to have someone on watch. Since there was still sunlight out, I volunteered to stand it while everyone else hid in their tents. Jeez, worst day of my life. Finally, I got back inside of my tent and tried to get some rest. I don't remember falling asleep, but I was suddenly woken up to someone outside asking for help. It was the same voice of the guy who ended up 30 kilometers away. Except that guy is still in the hospital. He would call out someone's name and say it a few times and then try to get them outside. I think it was my squad leader who yelled at everyone to stay the fuck in our tents and not to go outside. For the next few minutes, he practically begged us. It sounded like he was in the tree line, maybe 20 meters away, somehow guessing our names. Here it was, trying to break us down when we were at our lowest point. Could have gotten right through our tents, but, well, it just wanted to fuck with us. Finally, it stopped, and just as I thought it was gone, I heard it say my name twice, in a taunting kind of tone. Then a huge tree came tumbling down, and that was it. Traumatized, everyone stayed inside their tents until we heard trucks coming. Over the radio, we were told to pack our tents in less than 30 seconds and get on the trucks. We had no more than 5 minutes. I wasn't going to be the first one to step outside, so I waited until a good number of people got out. I've never seen a group of people move faster in my life. The tents were stuffed into their bags, poles bent, and bags were halfway on our bodies. People practically stumbled into the trucks. We were told that we were being evacuated due to terrible conditions, and we were heading back to base. But we all knew the real reason. I was relieved to be out of the cold, but we were still on this damn mountain, and that thing would still be able to find us. When we got back, we all showered and got into dry clothes. No one talked. They just went to sleep and tried to understand what had gone down that day. Each and every single one of them realizing that we would likely go back up there in a few days. The next morning, after being evacuated, everyone was obviously exhausted, and a few guys were sick with pneumonia. Being wet, cold, and nearly scared to death really took a toll. I don't think the incident with the thing outside our tents was talked about in large groups, but it was definitely talked about off on the side. A few guys maintained the fact that it was just a great big prank and laughed it off, but whenever they laughed, it was like they were asking for some form of validation. Even in the rear, we were kept busy cleaning weapons and gear and getting ready for whatever was next. Our unit has an unexplainable obsession with training, and it really cut into our morale. But at least it made time go by fast. Life seemed pretty normal despite the weather. I stayed indoors at all times unless we were exercising. I didn't have the heart to tell anyone who was probably watching us from the trees, even if I didn't feel it. The farthest I'd ventured was maybe a week after coming down the mountain. The base has a small store with an inventory identical to a gas station. I'd gotten tired of what they were feeding us, and my mind had started to rationalize all of my fear away. And so, I went. Nothing crazy happened, but I did, however, notice there were people there who were definitely not Marines. These guys were big, burly, and sported full beards. I pretended to look at the selection of Doritos and caught a glimpse of a very particular trident tattoo. This meant that whoever this person was a Navy SEAL, currently or at some point. I wonder about the other guys. I approached the bearded guy and simply asked him if he was a SEAL. When he turned around to look at me, he simply looked and said, "Yeah, sure. How'd you know?" The tattoo is a dead giveaway. I used to see my college roommate hang all that moto shit up in his room. "Oh, really?" was all he said. I didn't know what to say, but I wanted to impress him. He's actually a SEAL now. His demeanor got a little friendly. "Oh, shit. What's his name?" "Kurtz. He's an officer." "Is his first name Walter?" "Yeah, it is. Do you know him?" "Do I know him? He's outside smoking a cigarette." Now, a little info on my friend. We worked out a lot together as we both had a sick fascination with pain. Either running, hiking, or swimming. We would torture ourselves nearly every day until he left. I kept up with him as he went through all the training cycles. Then he just disappeared. I'm talking gone from every fucking form of social media. I talked to his parents, and all they got from him was the occasional letter. It always bothered the hell out of me that he straight up disappeared from the world without saying a damn thing. I thought about it nearly every day. There he was, outside, and all I wanted to do was get one good punch in. Navy SEAL or not, he was still a dick. When we stepped outside and I saw him, I still hated his guts, but I had a feeling that me versus a bunch of Navy SEALs probably wasn't going to work, despite having the power of God and anime on my side. He didn't even notice me until I'd said his name. In any other setting, I probably should have saluted since he was an officer and I was enlisted scum, but I didn't give a shit. He seemed genuinely happy to see me and wouldn't let go of my hand. We did some catching up, mostly questions from him about my boring life. Whenever I'd asked him stuff, he would deflect, make a joke, or give me a one-word answer. The man just would not elaborate about what he's been up to. After about 10 minutes of talking, the group of them decided they were just about done stocking up on Mountain Dew and gummy worms. Before they headed back, Kurtz pulled me aside and threw his cigarette to the ground. With a look of complete concern and worry, he said, "Listen, you really shouldn't go back up there. This ain't the place you want to be. You understand?" I wasn't really sure what to say. I just nodded solemnly before he shook my hand and left. That was the last time I've been able to talk to him. One thing to note is that group of guys didn't all have beards or tattoos. Don't get me wrong here, but Navy guys do have a certain look. I can't explain it unless you've been around them long enough, but not everyone in that group was a SEAL. I saw one guy wearing an army-related t-shirt, so I'm guessing they were some form of cross-branch team. Anyway, I headed back to the concrete hotels and spent some time reading, just trying to get my mind off what he had said. Should I break my ankle or pretend to be sick? They don't have Uber here, and the highway is quite some distance away. Ultimately, I decided that my pride was more important than my life. I ended up going back into the mountains. Jeez, I felt nothing but dread. Here I was being stalked and harassed by something. And on top of that, the Marine Corps is destroying my body every day. The human body isn't designed to hike 170 kilometers in a week with 200 pounds of gear, let alone up mountains. However, sometimes you get a break. The hikes were relatively short, and all we did was practice our rock climbing skills at night. After about 3 weeks in these mountains, my body started to get used to the altitude and the amount of physical activity we were doing. I was counting down the days in my head every few minutes, making quick calculations and crunching the numbers on each activity and how much closer I was to safety. Things weren't going to be that easy, of course. I had a pretty decent amount of anxiety and dread this entire time, but I rationalized that it was just my mind. I didn't notice until the third day, when we peaked on one of the larger mountains, that we were headed for Devil's Incline. It had to be a mistake, because the compasses were acting weird, right? I talked to a few of the higher-ups, and sure enough, that was our final destination, because the CO thought it would be a challenge. Oh, great. They're leading us straight to our deaths. Dulce decorum est kind of deal. The closer we got there, the worse I felt about this whole thing. I couldn't sleep for more than 10 minutes because I swear I could feel it watching me. Not wanting to go crazy, I confided with my squad leader, and all he said was, "Yeah, I feel it. Don't want to talk about it." The next day we were briefed on our final training exercise. Our job was to assault to the peak of Devil's Incline. The vast majority of it would be climbed using carabiners and rope and traditional techniques. The final 500 meters is mostly gravel and can be traversed on foot. We would be provided overwatch by special forces operating in the area. Nothing new. The military is imaginative. If we see them, ignore them. We begin the assault at sunset and get to the middle of the mountain around midnight. Everything's going smooth. We're climbing the cliffs slowly and methodically. On one particularly large cliff, I set up one of the anchor points so the Marines can rappel from another side of the cliff. I turn around and head for the next cliff. Before I start to climb, somebody angrily asked me why the hell I cut the line, that I could have gotten someone killed. I respond that I didn't cut the line, and head back to see what the hell had happened. The rope was sliced perfectly, like surgically almost. If you've ever cut climbing rope before, you'll know that it's almost impossible to get such a clean cut. You'll always have a tiny bit of fraying, even with the sharpest of knives. This rope had no fraying at all. I'm assuming that this was the same thing that's been harassing us all month, trying its best to kill us. Fortunately, there weren't many cliffs after that. The 500-meter slope of gravel turned out to be way too steep to hike straight up. Also, out of nowhere, a blizzard decided to make our lives hell. To this day, I've never seen such terrible weather. We're talking 70 miles an hour winds, whiteout conditions, everything. It was insane. On the way up, I swore I was going to freeze to death. The slope seemed like it would never end. After about 3 hours, someone had mentioned that multiple Marines were missing. Our first reaction was to stop and sit there for an hour, and then send half of us back down in an attempt to find those Marines. That was the coldest I'd ever been in my life. At least hiking provided some warmth, but sitting there being buried alive in snow and wind, yeah, it was bad. I don't know who made the call to keep pushing forward to the top, but it was the only way anyone was going to survive. There was a road on the other side of the mountain with vehicles most likely waiting for us. There was no use kicking around anymore for Marines in the snow, because things were just getting worse. Pretty much everyone had some form of frostbite. We just didn't have the right gear to protect ourselves. Finally, we got to the top, and thankfully there are tents waiting for us. The tent I'd got was broken, so I ended up piling in with a bunch of other guys like a bunch of sardines. Jeez, what a shit show that was, setting up in the wind. They gave us maybe 20 minutes while they figured out what to do with the missing guys. I'm assuming they called the proper authorities way before that. It was way too windy for helicopters, and nearly impossible for even us to search the area. The wrong gust of wind could literally blow us down the mountain, tumbling face first. Their solution was to first use our thermal optics from the top and search for the guys that way. Nothing. Then we all got in a big line and held hands as we walked down the mountain. Nothing. Granted, we didn't bring our 200 pounds of crap with us, so it was a lot easier walking back up. But by now it was 4 a.m. and it seemed to be getting worse. They told us to go back to our tents and warm up for 20 minutes because guys were literally turning into zombies. Now, this is quite possibly the weirdest part. For the next 12 hours, no one remembers what the hell happened. Everyone woke up in their tents and has absolutely zero recollection. It was daytime now and everywhere was covered in snow. A few of the Special Forces guys, including Kurtz, were talking to all of my higher-ups about something. I didn't find out until later that the SF dudes found all of our missing guys at various locations. Not 30 kilometers far, but much shorter distances like 5 to 10 kilometers. Ears bleeding too. While that's not impossible to hike in a few hours, it's damn hard to get lost on a mountain where your only objective is to go up. Not to the side, or around or down. Up, damn it. We radioed that in, and the base camp sent special vehicles designed for the snow to get them. They kind of resembled half-tracks. The same day, they loaded us up on these special snow trucks and told us we were going back to the barracks. When we got there, we were debriefed on how successful our mission was, and some BS about accountability of the guys. Blah, blah. In any other situation, they would have lost their jobs if they lost a Marine. Just not in Bridgeport, I guess. We packed up our bags that night and got woken around 3 a.m. to get on a bus back to the desert. I was extremely relieved to be back. No one ever really talked about our time there again. The guys who disappeared always came back from the hospital saying they didn't remember anything, or that they didn't want to talk about it. Wow. All I can say is, never go to Bridgeport, folks. So there you go, the first couple of stories on being a Marine and seeing some weird shit. If you want me to continue, then just drop me a line in the comments below. As ever, I'll do my best to reply to it everyone that I can, or at least as many as I can. Well, that's it for this evening. Know what? See you all again real soon, back with another great story for you on Wednesday. But for now, that's enough for me. So, bye-bye. Thank you so much for choosing to spend your time listening to me. Now, if you enjoyed the Dr. Creepen experience, then come find me on Facebook. Come chat with me on Twitter. Listen to the background music and download it if you like on SoundCloud. Drop by the store, pick up a t-shirt. And, importantly, if you've got a story you'd like me to read, send it to Dr. Creepen's Vault, the subreddit I set up so that I could read your stories. Now, looking forward to seeing you all again real soon. So, come check me out, okay?